Welcome to Human Experience, a podcast about life, sharing experiences, and how to make yourself feel better. Men need to talk more about the wellbeing, so let's make a start.
So welcome listeners to episode 5 of Human Experience. This week Chris and I are going to be talking to you about the ego. It's something that, whether you know it or not, will be an impact in all of our lives. Some experiences that I've had with the ego when I understood, at a very basic level what the ego was, I noticed negatively impact a lot of my mental health. We thought this episode would lead on nicely as well from our special guest last week, John, who talked a lot about ego that he dealt with and then how he's used meditation and things like that in his life. So we just thought this would be a nice transition into this week's episode for us to kick off what topic we're going to... So the topic we're going to cover is ego, and part of that topic is going to be explaining what it is, how it can impact your mental health, and ways to keep the ego in check and recognise when it starts to take over. So, Chris, how are you doing this week, mate?
Yeah, all right, mate. Thanks for asking. Still reaping the benefits from last week's episode with John. Really useful, I thought.
I thought last week were a class episode, and if there's any listeners out there that haven't listened to our episode 4 of Human Experience, then I'd strongly recommend you go ahead and do that.
Yeah, because like you say, it is a real good transition into this, and we'll get onto it. But like mindfulness, being mindful of your thoughts, that's key to overcoming your ego, from what I understand. And try to define the ego. Like I was doing a bit of research on it, and there's loads of terms out there like egocentric, egoism. He's got a massive ego. Like I think it's a term branded around, and it can have a number of different meanings. So I'll try and explain what it means to me and try and use some of the words I've read about it to get that across. Yeah. So the ego is really the mind's identity of our own personality. So it's the mind creating a construct of your personality. So I am Chris. I like football. I don't like seafood. Stuff like that, where you're telling a story about yourself and you're building up an image of who you are in the world, and that isn't a true image of you. That isn't really who you are, but you've built up this almost like a character. That's your movie character. And it takes all the beliefs we have about our personality, our talents, and our abilities, and it kind of gives you like a mask to wear in society. And the more you buy into those things, the more you're building your ego into something. If I really say, I'm a left-wing Labour supporter, if you really buy into those emotive sort of subjects, that can be, you're building yourself up to be quite a fragile person, I think. And I've noticed this in myself, because if things don't mirror what you have built up yourself, then that's where you start getting a bit, you can impact your mental health ultimately, is what we're talking about. What do you think?
Yeah, so, someone once said to me when I was talking about ego, because like someone once said to me, ego lifters is a term that I did in gyms, when I've been going training and stuff like that. And the individual I was speaking to at the time, which were our guest last week, said to me, your ego is your sense of personal identity. It's a feeling of self-importance. So like you said, that character that you build of this is how Stu or Chris would react, deal, expect, behave in these scenarios. It's that little voice in your mind that triggers the impulse, so to speak, of like how you should react into those circumstances, or, certainly from that's what I've been told in the past. But the bit I can relate to is, it's the protection to self. Yeah. So who you think you are, like I'll give an example of what I believe is when an ego has been triggered. So we've all been on nights out before in the past. We've all got blind drunk with his mates, and we've all been in situations where the two of us are observed where someone may accidentally bump into another lad. Now, the person that bumped into that other lad in my story here has not meant to do it at all. Total accident, busy place, had a few too many beers, bumped into someone. Now, the person who's been bumped into, straight away their ego kicks off in the mind, like, who do they think they're bumping into? Why? Straight defense mode. Like, do they know who you are? And then that individual then turns around, listens to that ego, and pushes the other person back, and that's where then issues can arise. And obviously that's fueled a lot by alcohol. Like, if that scenario would have happened in a supermarket, potentially this story would have turned out a lot different. But, you can see a lot of times where the ego can really like take over. And I wrote some things down to sort of go. So from the research that I looked into, I wrote some things down to sort of give an idea of when an ego could be kicking in. So these are some of the things that I found and I wrote down. So have you ever disliked someone succeeding? So have you ever had a scenario in your life where you've thought that person's got there and you don't think it's on merit, or you don't think that they're better than you at what they've succeeded as? That's a symptom, I guess, of the ego telling you about your character. Like, they don't deserve that, you deserve that.
Yeah.
Another one is, do you compare yourself to others? So you're comparing yourself, this made up image of self in your mind, to what your other made up image of other people's self is.
Yeah, that's a common one.
Yeah. So I'll go through these and then we can pick apart any that we think, we can discuss further. But do you look for attention is one. Do you see yourself as better, cleverer, or nicer than others? Do you like talking about people's imperfections? Have you ever noticed that you are virtue signaling, so showing off how moral you are? Have you ever looked down at someone? So these are all triggers when I'm looking into the ego, that's the voice sometimes that kicks in all of our minds. Like, I very much doubt there'll be anybody listening to this that I've said something there and they've gone, never done that.
Yeah.
Never done that.
Exactly. And we'll go through those and try and relate it to our own lives. But just a quick one. You develop your ego from childhood as well. So you've been living it, 35 years now, where it comes to me and you. And so it's so ingrained in everything that you do. And if you've learned something at childhood, chances are it's not fit for purpose when you get to being an adult. But because we're almost can't see the wood for the trees with it until you start doing a bit of that sort of mindfulness work on it. So it's everywhere. And even when you were saying that, like, one that really triggered me there, Stu, was virtue signaling. So I can't stand LinkedIn because I just see like loads of people and they're like, oh, look at me, I'm such a moral person, I'm helping
selling themselves
helping out a charity at the weekend and whatnot. But then is that my ego talking? Because and I think it is, because I'm not saying they're not virtue signaling, but I'm saying that because I'm like, shit, I wish I was doing something like helpful for charity. Do you know what I mean? And that's my ego building up a sort of story to protect my own ego as to why I'm not doing all that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? We're all ego driven, and we're just basically all bouncing around town with our egos trying to keep them in check, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, like a real life example of mine, and me and you have spoken about this in the past. And I obviously keep this story as high level, but there were a time in my career where there was someone that I used to manage who then got on the same level as me in career paths, and then succeeded where stepped past me into becoming like the level above. And I can remember at that time there was a voice inside my head that like, hang on a minute, you should be pushing for that. And whether I wanted it or not, at that moment in time, it was like, why are you not there? Why are people going to others when you've proven yourself, your worth? And me and this individual spoke about it a number of times, and it's a laugh now. Like, and it's not even something that I wanted. Like, when I sat down, like really thought about it, stripped everything away, it was purely an ego thing. That I was like, an image of yourself has been dented here. Like, you should have been jumping for that. You should have been the next in line. And it's just, but as well, I did nothing to put myself in that situation. Like, it wasn't like I was lobbying for it, and then all of a sudden someone just came and kicked me out of the way and moved this person. It was nothing like that whatsoever. The best person for the job got the job, but at that time, it was just something where my ego just run wild, like, and I had to really pull it in. And now, I suppose that situation really helped me understand and see when my ego starts to run wild.
Yeah, and I think that happened at a time where you were aware enough of your own sort of thoughts and how they interact. Like, because the ego is such a slippery thing. If you, let's say, if you hadn't been aware of that, you'd have probably never caught up with that. You might have ended up applying for the job yourself, even though you know you didn't want to do it, or just harboring like a load of resentment inside you because you believe that story. Like, and the story you might have told yourself then was, you know, if I'd have gone for it, I'd have definitely got it type thing. Do you know what I mean? But because you kind of had that chance to take a step back and think, actually, that story's not me, and I'm not buying into it today. So jog on with it.
Yeah, totally. Like, it's, you know, an ego's a massive thing I see in work industries and careers. Like,
100%.
Years gone by, there's been people that, you know, sort of probably moved careers or changed jobs because they've probably felt underappreciated, but they've never put themselves in the race to begin with. Yeah. So I can remember, like, in previous really old jobs that I had, speaking to people, and they're like, "Oh, I can't believe I got overlooked for supervisor role," and I'm like, "Oh, when did you have your interview?" Like, I didn't, but they know I'm good enough to do it, and it's like, but if you don't put yourself, like, that ain't how it works. Like, you've got to put yourself forward for what you want. Like, it's not wrong to want something. It's not wrong to believe in yourself and to go for something. When the ego starts to become dangerous if unchecked, is if it starts affecting your moods. Yeah. And you hinder, it's causing you to be unhappy because of that voice inside your head. Like, if you want something, go for it and work as hard as you can to get it, but don't think that that's your happiness, because that's your ego creating that character. And I think that's when it stems over into mental health, when your ego's telling you that you want something, you're good enough to get something, you work hard for it, and then you don't get it. And then that voice inside your mind starts protecting that self and saying, "Oh, you got, you know, it was favoritism," or whatever that is. And then that can lead down a very slippery slope.
Yeah, you make up another story, don't you, to protect your ego, like as to why you didn't get the job or whatnot. And you hit on an interesting point there. When I was doing some reading, I read a decent article, which I'll link in the notes, that talks about how to identify your ego. Because when you're new to it, it's hard to define, like we've talked about, and it's a slippery little bugger. But if you look for the emotional drama in your life, you'll find your ego, is how they've said to find it. So if you look at where you're angry at someone you love because you think they've not treated you right, or they've not, like, gotten you a drink of water even though you never asked for one, or you're feeling insecure about certain situations, or you're jealous of people, that at the root of all that is your ego. If you didn't have an ego telling you things should be this way, things should be that way, and if you were just, like, you know, just there, not thinking, just, like, being aware of your surroundings, none of that would bother you. But it's all clashing against that story, that your little voice in your head saying you're better than that, you deserve better than that. And so that's a good way to kind of hone in on your own life, where you've got that emotional sort of angst going on. That's your ego telling you, and you're resistant to what's happening in the real world.
Yeah, so one thing I read when I look into this topic is, it says every time you take something personally, this is a work of your ego. Because it's just, so, like, for example, if you've ever been given any feedback in your life and you're like, "Oh, that's not true, that's really, like, how dare they say that to me?" Like, that's your ego talking. You've got to recognise that each person, or all of us, see this world slightly different. Yeah. So from someone else's perspective or point of view, that feedback has come from somewhere. Yeah. So take it for what it is. Whether you believe it or not, really, you don't. So you can take the feedback on board, and you can structure it in a positive way. Whether you're going to take it forward or not, you've been given it. So you can recognise whether it is a genuine piece of feedback, or you can ponder it and say, "Actually, I've heard it, but I don't think that's me. I'm going to put this to one side and put it to bed." Yeah. And that's it. It ends. Yeah. Rather than you taking that feedback and stewing on it and holding on to it and having in your thoughts, like, "How dare they say that about me? I'm a lot better than that. I'm not that. No way am I that." You know, and you're just constantly in that cycle. And another saying that I remember hearing once is that a snake bite doesn't kill you, the venom does.
Yeah, it's so true.
So the action or the feedback will not kill you. Whatever the action is, that ain't what's going to kill you. It's the thoughts stewing on it that your ego's telling you every minute of every day about these situations that then keeps you in that perfect cycle of unhappiness.
Yeah, I've done that a lot in my life where I've just been ruminating on stuff, and it's happening in a professional sense a lot. You know, where things don't go your way, or you think you should have got a bit more praise or whatnot, and you just like, I can't believe nobody saw that or whatnot, and it's just you then build it into your unconsciousness, and we've talked about it in previous shows where that's where you build up like tense muscles, like pains in your shoulders, because you're just holding that like anxious sort of like rumination of what should have gone differently in your life. And
totally.
If you're not conscious of it, you'll just keep adding to that, and that's where you get the weight of your world on your back, and that's where you're ready to pop like you were with that. I'm going to keep going back to that McDonald's drink where that straw or that cap just wouldn't go on, and it just pushed you over the edge. That's what happened.
I'm actually surprised that didn't come up on last week's episode, because that's genuinely what I'm about to tell you. Johnny uses that as part of one of his mindfulness talks. So he used me as an example when he started doing his classes to sort of discuss how anxiety, mental health, frustration, and he uses that story to his clients and who are there, and says, look, this is a prime example where that shouldn't have been the reaction, but due to a lot of other internal factors that have not been addressed, that's what the result was.
Yeah, well, it's such a good example because we can all relate to those just stupid things you let bother you, and you know, it's a multitude of different things, but it's like, especially with the ego, you know, when what we've kind of probably talked about the ego mostly here is in a sense where, because it's easy to think somebody's living in their ego when they're quite arrogant, like, oh, I should have got that job, I should have done that. But ego's bad when it tips that side of the scales, but probably worse when it tips the other side, where you've got a really negative self-image. So, oh, I can't believe you fucked up at work again, or you didn't get that job because you're not good enough. Like that probably, arrogance and that side of it's bad, and can lead. I've seen a million of people fall into that trap, and I've probably fallen into it when I was younger as well. But I worry more, certainly from a mental health perspective, for those that have that really negative sort of tape playing in the mind where they're not good enough. I'm not even going to try and do that because I know I can't do it. That's ego as well. Like, you've built that self-image of somebody who just can't do those things, and that'll hold you back in a lot of different ways in your life if you're not careful with it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, like, you and I had egos playing before we started this podcast. Yeah. Like, you know, like what, you know, who'd want to listen to us? What have we, story have we got to tell? Will people get on at us or think we're like goofy for putting ourselves out there and airing it? But, you know, we had to press pause on those thoughts and just look at why we wanted to do this, what we wanted to get from it, and what benefit it had from us, and stop that, press pause on that tape that keeps playing. Like Chris says, it's, you know, it's 99.9999% of the time, and pretty much all of the time, what you're thinking never actually comes true anyway. So you might think, oh, this is the image they have of Stu, or what, you know, and you could go ask 100 people about who Stu is, or I could go ask 100 people, and say, who am I? And I'll get 100 different answers, all different answers. So the ego and character that you've built in your mind is your character. So if it's yours, you can change that whenever you want. It just takes perseverance. And every time you recognize that tape started to play again, just press pause, take a minute. Chris and I are going to talk as we go through the different weeks in this series around like the importance of now. And certainly when it comes to the ego, that is never more relevant, to just be able to work on recognizing your surroundings and grounding yourself to where you are at that moment in time. And all them thoughts that are negative spinning around in your mind are just that. They're just negative thoughts that you can put to one side. Yeah. You know, and whatever you want to get in life, you can go for it. Just the only thing I'd say from my recommendations is, whatever it is, don't pin happiness on it. Yeah. You can be happy just sat in your living room, just doing whatever you're doing with your family, with your kids, with your friends, on your own. Like, if you can just go for a walk on your own and have a smile on your face, then you've cracked it. But that's a very real possibility. And I think the more you practice pulling your happiness away from external factors, the better you'll be. And certainly, like with the ego, the ego wants you to have it on some of those. Like if you know, from my experience with my ego, every time I got to that target, the target then moved. You know, I might be like, I'll be happy when I get this part of my career or this job. Got into that job, then there was the next marathon to run to get somewhere, and my mind telling me again, you've got it, or you ain't got it, or you're good enough, or you're not good enough. So, you know, I think I went on a bit of a rant there, but certainly
it made sense, mate. I think what I'm hearing from you, there's two types of happiness. One's conditional, so that's you're basing your happiness on getting that certain salary bracket or getting that, you know, pizza on Friday night. Like, your happiness is based on something that somebody or a company or whatever could easily take away from you at any point. So it's a fake happiness because it relies on a perfect condition to be happening.
Yeah.
Whereas what you're saying about going on a walk, watching the sunset, just enjoying being with your family, that's internal. Like, you're no matter what else is going on in the world, you're enjoying that moment right there and then, and you're not putting any sort of thing on it being taken away. Like, you're just enjoying it for what it is there and then, and that's where you become stronger as a person, because you're not relying on anything else to make you happy. And what do we really want out of, like, winning the lottery? We want the feeling of, like, freedom, happiness, security. They're all feelings that you can cultivate in everyday life. Yeah, you might not be able to go and buy a yacht or whatnot, but you can still enjoy the little things in life, and that's the same. It's all coming from the same place if you can internalize it rather than externalize
100%.
it.
That's it, mate. It's just your outlook on it, isn't it? But I mean, how many times? Certainly, I can relate to what I'm about to say next. I don't know about yourself, Chris, but there's been so many times in my life where I have an image of, let's say, a night out, or I have an image of what a film's going to be like, or a story, or a meal in a restaurant. And then as soon as that is in any way knocked, that view I have in my mind, as soon as there's a little chink in the armour, suddenly it all just goes to shit. Yeah. It's like, right, that was rubbish. That was terrible. Like, because I'd pinned this perfect vision in my mind about what the day we're going to go like. Like, I've had nights out before, and I've been thinking, we're going to do this. This is the run that we're going to go on. And then something will happen, like someone will drop out, or, you know, take a turn for the worse, where we'll end up going to a completely different place. And then when we go to that place, what I might have recommended is dead. And you're like, this is terrible. I'm off home. I'm done. And that was, like, honestly, the more I've got older, the more I've recognised that I can be happy anywhere when I set my mind to it. Like, when I make that choice, like when I recognise that my ego's run wild, and I recognise that these negative thoughts are taking over, I can literally just be sat there with my mates in any surrounding or whatever and enjoy that night out. Yeah. I don't need to be going to, like, mega clubs or out like that. Like when I was in my early 20s, and your night depended on how good the atmosphere was. Like, the atmosphere could be nothing, but as long as I'm just sat there with my pals, you know, you have a great time. But again, that's come with awareness that I was doing that to myself.
Yeah, it's interesting because that leads on to the point I was going to talk about next. So, a good analogy I read today about overcoming the ego is, like, picture you've got a really overgrown garden and there's a massive, like, spiky hedge at the back, and you want to get rid of it. What you're not going to do is go in there and get right to the root and cut it down in one go. It's just too overgrown. You need to go in there and pick off branch by branch, leaf by leaf, until you get to the root of it. And that's what it's like after a lifetime of buying into this sort of story of yourself through your ego. You're just not going to take it down in one foul swoop. You need to begin detaching yourself from the individual thoughts that reinforce your ego, and then let go of them belief by belief until you get to a point. And me and you are never going to get to the point where we have zero ego. We're always going to have some sort of identity. And, you know, it's in the world we live in, you don't want to be like this blank bit of paper, or certainly I don't. I like certain parts of what my ego's built. I like certain parts of it, but it's just about not building your house on sand, that if somebody goes against what you think you are, that it crumbles your whole day. Like, you know, for instance, if you're somebody who needs praise every time you do one decent bit of work, and it pisses you off when you don't get that. Become somebody who just does the work, and if it's good, you'll just know that you'll get credit for it at some point in time. You don't need to be shouting about every single bit, and just let it come to you naturally. And some days there's some really, like, I'm massively into football, and there's some great managers like Rafa Benitez, ex-Newcastle United manager, was always like, look, I don't get too carried away when we win, and I don't get too down when we lose, because I know if we just keep doing our training right and whatnot, we'll win more than we lose. And I think that's a really great sort of mindset to have to get you through life without the emotional roller coaster of buying into every win and every defeat.
Yeah, because that's it. Like, this is only a negative concept when it starts to impact your happiness, well-being. If you can get yourself to a place where you can recognise that, and when it starts to get to the negative things, separate it from you, then this is hopefully what we're trying to discuss with you now. Like, this is something that on our journey has helped us, certainly helped myself recognising, and it's still work in progress. I'm not going to lie about that. Still very much a massive work in progress, but by shining that light on it, you're giving yourself awareness of it. So now, when I can feel it, I may have even reacted to something with ego, may have reacted, but I can quickly recognise it, stop it, and make an apology if I've, either to myself or to someone else. If that's, impacted anyone else, or if it's purely to myself, I apologise to myself and pump the brakes and carry on with the rest of my life in a more positive frame of mind.
Yeah.
Some tricks that I wrote down that can help you with getting your ego in check. One of the running themes is meditation. That's helping you be in the now. And another thing which I thought pretty good, actually, and I've never actually done it myself, but I'm going to start giving it a go, is practice gratitude. So just writing down on a daily basis, just it could be one thing, two things, three things, however many you like, just writing on a bit of paper, what have you got to be grateful for that day or in that moment. Could be big things, small things, however you want. But from the research that we're doing, that very much grounds you to focusing on what are the good things in your life that can sometimes get overshadowed if you're in a negative mindset.
Yeah. My wife would tell you a lot of stories about me just never really being happy with what I've got in front of me, and that's something I need to work on all the time, and I'm getting better with it. But even like first thing in the morning, sometimes I just sit there with my cup of coffee, everything's quiet, and I just like how lucky am I to have like a warm cup of coffee sitting on a nice sofa.
Yeah.
It's little things like that just shuts down all the noise and all the shit that you're telling yourself you need to get done that day, and just focus on what you're enjoying right there and then. And that's what we're talking about, unconditional sort of happiness, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. And another story I'll share with you. I used to get a lot of things like house envy. Like, I can always remember driving on the road around down, looking at massive houses, thinking, love that. And it relates into one time when I was sat in might have been like a queue for, say, like coming out of McDonald's drive-thru or something like that, and I was queuing on the road. And a friend of mine could see I was getting frustrated. I'm terrible in queue situations anyway, with that supermarket. If I would rather drive 40 minutes to a destination than sit in traffic for 30 minutes to get to the same destination. I'd rather it take me an extra 10 minutes but be moving than sat still and coasting to save myself 10 minutes. That's just how I am. But my friend turned to me and he was like, what are you getting so frustrated for? And I obviously explained about traffic, always does me head in. And he said to me, but where are you going to be after this? And I said, I'm going to be at home, sat on the sofa. And he's like, but you sat now. You're only ever sitting, laying or standing. Yeah. So you're in that spot. What you look around the outside of you is what you make it in your head. Do you know what I mean? So these mansions, these big things, you're never any going to be in one room. Do you know what I mean?
True, isn't it? So true, but your ego's, the ego's like, no, I need a bigger house, I need a bigger car, I need this, I need that status that comes with all that kind of stuff. And
that is the image for those things. Like if anyone on this listening to this has got a big massive house, and fair play to you. Anyone who's got any house whatsoever, fair play to you.
Just don't be defined by it. Don't let it define your life.
That's it. Yeah, totally. Like, don't get me wrong. If I had unlimited amount of money, you would get a different house from what you live in now. Like that, I recognise that, but again, that wouldn't define my happiness. If I lost it tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, that's fine. I'm still happy with who I am. My family are healthy. I'm healthy. I've got all these things to be grateful for. That was just a chapter that's now been closed and moved on to the next one.
Yeah, no, totally agree, mate. There's a common theme throughout all our episodes, and that's just your mind can be your worst enemy or your best friend, and it's about building that. That is the most important relationship you have in life with your own self, and try and create that healthy self-image that doesn't rely on too much from the external world to pump you up every day. Internalize it, try and become your own best friend, as cheesy as that sounds, and you'll get over a lot of these like little bumps in the road. And it's a lesson every day. You know, I had a day today, and something didn't go quite my way at work, and it pissed me off for the afternoon. But now in the sort of evening time, I can look back at it and just laugh at what a dickhead I was at even buying into that story. You know what I mean? It means literally zero to my life overall. Like, I don't know why I let it spoil like 2 or 3 hours of my day.
And I know I've said this to you, I don't think I've said it on the podcast before, but I'm a firm believer that we as humans, heaven and hell isn't something that you, in my mind, go to when you pass away. Heaven and hell is what you live in every single day. You can choose to live in heaven or you can choose to live in hell, and it's what's captured inside your mind and how you view life. And that to me is massive. When I stop and think, and I'm like, do I want to live in this hell or do I want to live in heaven? Because the only person that has power over that is me, no one else. Like, the happiness is within you, and going to anybody will maybe help you unlock that, but ultimately it's you that's got to take yourself there. And that's what I've learned anyway. So that concludes this week's episode. Chris and I would like to thank you for listening. Please subscribe and leave us a review to help our community grow. You'll find links to our social media and any other resources discussed in this episode in our show notes.